Welcome to The Flight Plan, Inside Corporate Travel, a podcast series by Telios Travel.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to The Flight Plan, Inside Corporate Travel. My name is Federico Galvez, and I am the Director of Operations and Account Management at Telios. I am part of a fantastic team that has helped many mid-sized companies improve their travel programs. And today I'll be today's host for podcast, where we'll be talking about the main challenges companies face in business travel. Joining me today is Natasha Sasson, our Head of Business Development. Hi, Nat. I'm so excited to have you with us today.
I'm so excited to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, thank you for taking the time to join us today. So let's start today's podcast by talking about those companies that don't have a TMC but are ready for one. What, in your experience, would typically leads a company to seek out a TMC?
So there's a couple of reasons that would lead a company to seek out a TMC, and it would be seeking out a TMC for the first time. So a company that's never had one before, right? So what would typically happen is that they're starting to see more regular travel in their company. And there's a number of reasons why they would suddenly start seeing that uptick in travel. And right, once you see an uptick in travel, then you start seeing it reflected in the budget. And that's when there's more eyes on it and they want a TMC. So some of those reasons might be they start hiring more remotely, which means that teams have to travel more often to get together. They open a new office location, which means that people have to go to that new office location for training, et cetera. They expand to new sales territories. We've seen this many times, right, where there's a client that they just opened a new international office, for example, right? And a lot of people have to now start traveling to that office. More client-facing work. So suddenly they've acquired a new client, or they do consulting. More events start popping up. Anything that kind of requires more of that traveling to visit clients. And then, of course, mergers and acquisitions, right? So they acquire another company. They got to start visiting that company more frequently. So number of reasons why a company would start traveling a lot, but that's where a TMC would start,
Yeah, definitely. So if that happens to a company, I can't even imagine how can they manage all this change without a TMC, right? Without an agency or partner that could help them to organize business travel, right? So I can see, for example, one of the challenges if you don't have a TMC is this type of companies that don't have a control over the travel spend, right? Everyone could book business, could stay at 5-star hotels. So I guess that's one of the biggest challenges. So have you seen or have you discussed recently or talk about with a company that has some of those challenges?
Yeah, I just met with a company recently. And they were telling us that they've had a lot of people going out and just getting like a nice steak dinner. And they were laughing at it, right? But it's obviously, and they're at a point now where they're looking to get a TMC because it's not getting funny anymore, right? Their people are splurging and they feel like there's no control over the spend. So there's no concept of how much their employees are possibly spending on, the steak dinner is an example, but obviously it would be, like you said, they could be buying, business class flights. They could be buying last minute flights where those tickets really skyrocket. Nobody knows. So there's a number of challenges that start coming into play that would lead that, client to start looking like, okay, I definitely need a TMC at this point. So one of those is that lack of control over travel spend. And they can't enforce the policies that they have. So even if they do have some policies like, hey, you can't spend more than $300 on a flight to this destination. If no one's enforcing it, people are just going to be booking it and there's no real control over it. And that starts getting out of hand too. They end up also having no duty of care. So you got travelers traveling everywhere. How do you keep track of where all these people are going? That's a huge issue, right? That becomes a big challenge, especially if there's issues or emergencies. Another one would be that they have no centralized reporting. People are booking on, directly on the airline site. We're booking directly on the hotel site. The data is just everywhere. They might miss something. There's a lot of chances, obviously, for that stuff to slip through the cracks. So there's no real comprehensive central data reporting for all of their travel. And then you end up also with poor traveler experiences. That starts happening a lot too, because there's no customer service. Because again, there's nobody supporting their travel. So who's going to do it? The person that's handling it right now, which is probably like a procurement person, is getting these calls at 2 a.m. hey, I just missed my flight. What do I do? And who's going to deal with that, right? So it starts becoming more of an issue also in that sense. And then last but not least, the employees start getting overwhelmed too. And you start seeing a lot of employees just getting very, very frustrated having to manage this on their own with nobody to call on the other end, or no additional help or support, or no online tool to be able to help them navigate this or manage these travel policies. And that's where things kind of start building up and getting a lot more challenging.
You mentioned actually really good points. One of them is duty of care. So because companies are just looking at how much people are spending, but they're not looking at where their employees are. They could be in an area where there's a hurricane, right? Or they might be in danger. So that's one of the things that companies are actually starting to look more into, to have tools that allow them to know where the employees are. And also if they are in danger and need to do change or, flight change, if they have to call an airline and they're collapsed, of course, it will be hard to get a hold of someone to make a change. We actually had a client that they had some employees that were trapped. I think it was in Houston, and there was a hurricane there. And our team actually helped them to get hotels and get them relocated to other areas as well. And that's where also TMC can help, companies to have that duty of care, because it's not only traveling for business, right? It's also you need to take care of your employees.
Yeah. Wow. That's crazy. I mean, all these issues, like, they're common, right? They pop up and there could be so many challenges like this. And yeah, we see it a lot too. So
yeah, definitely. And you also mentioned that if they don't have someone within the company that is in charge of business travel, right? So it's usually an HR executive or executive assistant or someone in accounting managing the way people travel, right? Looking after the policy and also, giving that support for travelers when they're out visiting our clients. So I can imagine, how overwhelmed these people can be.
Yeah, what ends up happening is that because this is like one of those line items that's not very clear who would manage it in a company, it ends up kind of falling in a couple different places. So it would fall either under HR, right? Because this is managing employees and their travel. It could fall under executive assistants. This happens obviously a lot because executive assistants are just doing anything to support their executives, and that includes their travel. And then, of course, accounting and procurement, right? These people that are dealing with, more of the financial side of things, that ends up falling on their lap a lot too, because it becomes, like I mentioned, a very, very large line item on their budget. So yeah, it could fall under a number of these people, and they have a lot of other things on their plate. HR is not just dealing with travel, right? Procurement is not just dealing with travel. And so suddenly they get this additional task that's pretty monumental because they become now a travel agent. They're answering the calls, like I said, at 2 a.m, right? And they also have to manage the reporting. They have to manage the, everything that's going on, the expenses, all of it, right? Somebody submits an expense receipt and if they don't have an expense tool, who's doing that, right? So it ends up being a lot of work for these people that already have so many other things on their plate.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I can imagine, right? Like if you have some strategic tasks that you have to do. And then on top of that, you have to deal with employees traveling. So I guess, yeah. So I think that makes sense where, a travel management company can help those organizations to take that, burden of their back and kind of give them the support they need in terms of business travel. So I also get back to the part when you mentioned about not having visibility right into travel spend. So if everyone is booking anywhere they want, I guess that data no one within the company would have visibility other than that, the amount they spend, right? So for hotels, for example, if anyone, like if your employees are traveling to one area and they're all staying in different hotels, I think they might be losing opportunities or missing out on opportunities to have better deals with hotels.
I get what you're saying. Yeah, it becomes, so like you said, because the piece I mentioned, right, is just the budget, right? Okay, yeah, maybe they can see how much people spend. But what you're saying is there's obviously a deeper layer of data that they don't have access to. So that reporting would cover not just spend, right? But they're missing out on which destinations are they traveling to? Which airlines are they traveling? Which car rental companies are they renting from? How many nights are they staying? What cities are they traveling to, right? There's so much data that goes into travel, and that data is actually very, very valuable. So that's where you're getting at, right? Where they right now, they are not able to get the most out of that data because they don't have it. So once you have it and you're able to see, like in the example that you gave, we can see everybody's traveling to the same city. Let's say it's New York City. You have a lot of people traveling to New York City. They're staying over 100 nights in New York City a year with all of their employees combined, and everybody's staying in a different hotel. That is a massive missed opportunity because of the discounts you can get with group rates and negotiating for, when you have a large amount of nights and you can put them all into one hotel. So being able to see that data can actually save you a ton of money too, because you have more awareness of those opportunities for discounts.
And you can be more strategic as well, right? Exactly. Because you know where exactly or what hotel you should be reaching out to, right? And then there's another part, the other part that this executive assistant or whoever is in charge of the travel program, they also need to do that procurement part, right? That where they have to reach out to a hotel, right? They don't have the contacts, they don't have the experience, and they have to now negotiate with a hotel to get a good rate, right? So I guess it's another example where a TMC can come in and give them a hand with that negotiation.
Yeah, it's one other task that these people have to do also. Managing travel is clearly a very multifaceted, multi-role thing that it requires a lot. There's so many different moving pieces to it. And you can't expect this one like HR person to be that travel agent, to be negotiating with vendors, to be managing everybody's travel expenses. Like it is a lot of work. So yeah, that's of course where a TMC would come in and take all of that off of their plate.
Okay, so let's go back and talk about those employees that need to change their trips and because business travel is uncertain, right? You don't know when a client, might cancel a meeting and you are in another country in a different time zone, right? And then you need to change a flight. And that person who usually supports you, that person is not awake, or you need to reach out to the airline to make a change. So imagine being 2 hours, waiting for 2 hours, trying to get a hold of someone. I guess, that could be also overwhelming for employees. So I guess at TMC, since they have experienced agents, they can definitely handle that and, improve that employee's experience in terms of support while they're traveling for business.
Yeah, so that is obviously a very common occurrence that we see in business travel, right? There's always changes, like you said. There's always something going on. And it happens at any hour, in any time zone, in any location in the world. And if you have this HR person or this procurement person that's handling it in the United States on the East Coast, then who's going to be able to help them when it's not within that time zone? So that's where a TMC would really also be incredibly valuable when it comes to those odd hours of customer service, when customer service is required, because TMCs typically have 24/7 support.
Yeah, definitely. I think, that would be very helpful. Instead of calling American Airlines directly, waiting for 2 hours, getting a hold of someone, then, you'll have a team that could help you with that process way quick, more like faster than an airline could do it.
Yes, exactly.
All right. So I guess we've talked about many different challenges that these organizations that are growing fast are facing in terms of business travel. But how can a TMC actually help them, right? We have talked about agents. We have talked about vendor negotiations. But what else can do a TMC, and how easy is for a company to actually start working with a TMC?
Yeah, so TMCs can do a lot more than some of those things that we mentioned. So one, there's obviously the savings. So that was like a key piece. We've talked on a couple of ways that they can save money there. So that would be negotiating with vendors, right? Enforcing the travel policy. Like I mentioned, there's a lot of money that's lost when people are not adhering to the travel policy. And then there's also joining the corporate loyalty programs. So there's an interesting piece there on how a TMC can support them. Because the other piece that's missing when you don't have a TMC is, like we mentioned, everything consolidated in one place. And if you get an online booking tool is where you can input all your loyalty programs across your corporate loyalty program and even your individual ones. And you can also enforce your travel policy on that tool, which will allow everybody to book directly on that tool, and all the travel policies will be automatically enforced and approvals will be set in place as well. And then you also get the consolidated reporting and the data so that you can actually negotiate with vendors more effectively. So that's where a TMC can bring also that more technology that can support all of that as well. So we mentioned the agent piece. This would be more the technology piece.
Yeah, definitely. And then the other piece would be the employee experience, right? The traveler. Because if you want to have adoption of your program, then I guess you need to offer them tools that they like, right? That they're similar to the way they research online, they're similar when they, go to booking.com or Expedia.com. I guess they need those tools that are, that provide that user experience where they're booking travel.
Yes, exactly. So them being able to have access to that tool, will definitely lead to a lot more adoption as well. And you want that adoption because then you get all of that control that we mentioned of being able to, have everything centralized and having, all the data in one place instead of having to chase people for it everywhere. So yes, it definitely impacts the employee experience.
Yeah. Yeah. And also the approver. Let's say if this company has an approval process in place, instead of sending emails, right, and waiting for your manager to approve, adding extra work, because one of these tools that are called travel and expense softwares can, come in handy for approvers, for employees to streamline the whole process.
Yeah. I always love talking to TMCs that have never used an online booking tool before, because a lot of times, like the way we explain it is just like, it's basically like an OTA, like you're used to booking online, but now it has all this extra stuff that you can add to it that lets you manage your travel program. And people are always just so mind blown. They're like, what? I can add all my loyalty programs and it's just going to be across all of my employees. And I'm like, yes. And it automatically adds it all in. And then you'll get all your reporting. You'll know everything your travelers are doing all in one place. And people are just like, it's really exciting when you meet people that haven't even used one before. Obviously now we're seeing more and more and more adoption of these tools. So we speak to a ton of people now. Like I spoke to a recent client that they were like, I was at another company. We were using an online booking tool. And in my new one, we don't have one. So I kind of want to bring one because I see the value in it. So you're seeing more adoption of these tools, but they're very, very exciting for people that have never seen them before. They're mind blown. Definitely.
Yeah. And also because we have many clients that have come to us without, online booking tool, right? And what we see is they definitely get more adoption. They start giving employees ability to book travel to book travel for themselves. So we have many clients that actually were in that place where they didn't have an online booking tool. They didn't have a TMC. And we have seen, a massive improvement in terms of their travel policy adoption, in terms of savings, because savings are not only the discounts you get, right? Savings are also having people to adhere to your travel policy, always booking, flights that are according to the budget, booking trips well ahead as well. And also the amount of work that this HR person or travel assistant has to do with these clients, we've seen that has dramatically decreased, right? TMC, as a TMC, we become a partner to them and help them to, support them with all the business travel needs.
Yep, that's exactly it. They can definitely support all of that and take all of that off of their plate is what a TMC would do.
Right. So now that we're talking about, how TMCs can help companies, do you have any examples of, recent companies that you have speak to recently What are their common pain points at the moment? What have they, said to you?
That's a great question. So when we're looking at people that do not have a TMC, it's all of the points that we raised earlier, right? So it's all the challenges that they're having right now, which includes, right, having no centralized reporting, poor traveler experiences, not having enforcement of their travel policy, et cetera, et cetera. So all of that we mentioned for people that do not have a TMC, those are the challenges we'll typically see that are very, very common. When they do have a TMC, it's a bit of a different challenge, which I know that today we wanted to focus our conversation more on those without one, but just to dip our toes a little bit into that. So the ones that do have a TMC, they typically are switching TMCs because of poor customer service. That is 99% of the time is what I see, is that they are just not happy with the customer service. It's not meeting their expectations. I've heard some crazy stories of CEOs stranded. I had a client that recently where she was telling me that her CEO was stranded somewhere in Europe and they couldn't get a hold of anybody at their TMC. And they were so stressed. Wow. And because it was the CEO, who is obviously very senior, she got the brunt of that, right? The people who are managing the travel in the company are the ones that are getting that pressure, and it's pressure from management.
Of course.
Because it's the management that is getting affected by that. So as soon as it starts touching their VIPs, that's where they really start feeling the pain a lot of the time too. So that was a really interesting case where that happened. But yeah, it tends to be that, and they get fed up with the customer service. And the most common challenge I hear about customer service is long wait times. I've heard people, like telling me that they're on the phone for 40 minutes. I've heard people telling me just waiting on hold with their TMC, not with an airline, with a TMC. Yeah. So it can get pretty bad out there. And it happens a lot we see a lot of companies that'll work with TMCs that service accounts that tend to be way larger, and they're on the smaller end of their client base. So they tend to get deprioritized in terms of service too.
Of course.
Yeah.
Yeah. So once you're bigger, you kind of become a call center, right? Because you need to manage and give support to big companies, and that might lead to losing that personal touch, right, with a smaller company.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's these agencies, like they really, the companies, they care a lot about customer service. Like that's so important to them. And it's very interesting to see like how that really is truly the number one priority for them. Like, yes, they're happy with the vendor negotiations. They want that too. They want all of this other stuff that, but it really comes down to that would make them decide between different TMCs.
Yeah, of course. And if something goes bad with the team, with the CEO or another, C-level executive, yes, that would look bad on the person who booked the trip, right? And that executive assistant who's handling the trip, I guess that would, reflect back on them, not on the TMC in the end.
It does, exactly. And it could obviously threaten their job. And that's where it really becomes an issue. Like that's in that situation, I had, the client came and they were very stressed that it could threaten their job. So of course,
I can see why.
So they got really nervous and they started evaluating TMCs. So yeah, it could definitely get to that point, especially if it's starting to impact the C-suite.
Okay. All right. And so I think we've covered most of the things we wanted to talk today. So just to wrap up, what would you recommend for those small companies that are starting to see their business travel grow? What recommendations, where would you suggest for them to start? If they want to improve their travel program? Yeah.
So of course, if they're getting to a point where it's definitely scaling and they need that support, a TMC is a no-brainer. Bringing on a TMC. If they're on the smaller end, so, right, we're talking maybe like sub $1 million annual travel spend. They should look for more mid-size, smaller TMCs to support them so that they can get that customer service. Versus, obviously, if they are above that, typically we'll see like maybe 5 million and above annually. That's where it starts climbing. Okay, maybe they could start looking at some of the larger TMCs. But yeah, those smaller ones, they definitely should look at more mid-sized ones. And it's a common fallacy I see a lot. They only know the names that they know, right? The main recognized brands. So they'll go to those, but those tend to service way larger clients than what they are. So that's my first recommendation, is go to one that can give you that customer service that you need based on your size and can give you that attention, especially as you're starting this up. because you need a lot of attention at this point because you need to get organized, right? You've never had a TMC before. So you need to figure out, okay, let me understand my data. Where should I put it? What should my travel policy look like, right? Most of the people that come with without a TMC, they have maybe a little bit of a travel policy or none, and they just need help putting it together and they need guidance. So the TMC can help guide them on that and look at their travel policy and give recommendations because they see obviously hundreds and hundreds of travel policies all the time. So they'll know exactly where to start and help guide them there. So building that travel policy, getting that TMC on board to help them do that, and then start looking at the reporting as it starts coming in to start helping with the vendor negotiations would be the step after that. But yeah, that would be where I would recommend they would start.
Perfect. Those were great recommendations. And thank you so much, Nat. Appreciate your time today. And we hope that this podcast is a well-time spent with us. And stay tuned. We'll be doing more podcasts in the future. So thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, everyone. And thank you, Federico.